Hey guys, Dad Chef. Today we are cooking for the family. We're going to be making baked Montreal salmon, crispy potatoes, citrus aioli, and braised chard. Kicking things off with potatoes, we're going to dump them into a pot of boiling salty water. We'll cook them until they're about fork tender. Could take about 25 minutes. After straining them off, you're going to want to let them cool down a little bit. Alternatively, you could run cold water over them to speed this process up. Gently dump your potatoes onto the lined pan with olive oil. They should be cooled down enough, so use the palm of your hand to smash them, increasing the surface area, allowing them to absorb oil and seasonings. Today I'll be seasoning my potatoes with granulated onion, granulated garlic, celery salt, and Montreal seasoning. I'll also be adding an extra pinch of kosher salt. I'm using all these seasonings very liberally. I want these taters as flavorful as possible. We'll be cooking these potatoes in the center of a 450 degree preheated oven. After about 45 minutes, we'll take them out, flip them over, and let them cook on the other side till they are good and crispy. To begin our citrus aioli, we'll need to start with zesting and juicing all of the citrus. This is how I like to cut them. I think it has the highest yield for juice out of each piece of fruit. The lemons and limes I was working with today were a little stiff, so I rolled them on the cutting board with the palm of my hand to loosen up some of those juices. With the help of your friendly neighborhood fine sieve, we'll be juicing each piece of fruit. This is a great opportunity to find out if you have any cuts on your hands. We'll be taking all the citrus juice and zest and pouring it into a small saucepan, then adding half a cup of sugar and mixing well. Transferring the pot onto the stovetop, you'll want to set the heat at a low-medium. We're going to let this simmer and reduce. The sugars will caramelize and it will become a thick syrup. After letting the syrup cool down, it should thicken up. So if you have a small pureeing machine like this one, you can just add mayonnaise and blitz. You can also do it by hand with a whisk, although it's kind of a lot of work. We're now going to scrape down the sides so that it's all evenly mixed. And we'll do one more puree on high for good measure. It's a lot of work, but this sauce goes really well with fish. Removing the leaf from the Swiss chard stem is pretty easy. Just gently grip the stem and pull the leaf away from it. Now this is technically a chiffonade, although we're doing a pretty rough job. There's definitely easier ways, but at this point, a rough chop is fine. The stems, on the other hand, we're going to want to cut with a little more attention because we want each piece to cook evenly. In a large stock pot, we're going to add olive oil and crushed garlic, followed by the Swiss chard stems, a pinch of salt, and a splash of olive oil. Now mix that around and cook it on medium heat. We're going to sweat out the moisture. After that's done, we'll add some red wine and let that reduce, followed by all the chopped leaves. It's going to be a lot, so just cram it in there. Push it down if you have to. With tongs, you can mix it around, allowing the top of the greens to meet the bottom of the pan so that it all wilts together at the same time. This could take about 5, maybe 8 minutes, but once it's done, we'll add the capers and introduce some warmth into them. Then we'll just set the mixture aside for later. Now it's time to cook the salmon. We're going to ball it up, raising the skin, making it easier to score it. Scoring the skin helps the salmon to not stick to the pan, get a crispier skin, and also allows seasoning to get into the meat. If you find your cut just wasn't long enough, you can use the tip of your knife and just shimmy it down. I'm going to season the meat side of the salmon with just the Montreal seasoning. On the skin side, we're going to use a lot of salt. This will help draw out moisture for a crispier skin. With my finger, I'm going to work the seasoning into the scores, not only just making them larger, but also working that season into the meat. I should also mention that I used paper towel to make sure the skin was dry. That's an important step that I wish I mentioned earlier. Here I have a large non-stick pan. It's not necessary, but it does make the job a little easier. So I've got just enough oil to coat, and we're going to lay the salmon skin side down away from you. As the fish is cooking, you'll notice there's a white line that raises along the sides. I refer to this as the cook line. When it reaches about halfway, I'll use a fish spatula upside down to turn it over. This helps not tear the skin. Although admittedly, this particular piece of salmon was giving me a hard time, so I chose to carefully ignore my own advice. And you'll see the salmon skin in the corner is raised a little bit from the spatula. Here's a great angle of the salmon skin shrinking when it hits the heat. You can just press down gently with your hand or spatula to make sure it lays flat. My family prefers salmon cooked through and without skin, so we'll be finishing these in the oven. The skin's very easy to remove when it's fully cooked. Now here's a fun plating demonstration. Here's a fancy spoon pull I know you've seen before. You think it's fancy, but it's actually really easy. Just drop the side of the spoon to the center of the dollop, and with one smooth motion, just pull. Those potatoes are looking mighty fine, I might add. Now for the big chunk of salmon. And how about a little more sauce on top? And I don't know, the Swiss chard ratio is a little off, so there we go. And that's that.